Well, I'll open up to any questions. Yeah.
So that CNN baseline, did they use like EGG or did they use like an actual like known CNN benchmark, or did they kind of just use like a tiny CNN? They go into that?
So I don't think, I don't remember. I'd have to check the paper.
Okay, yeah.
It was for this one.
Yeah, because it'd be interesting if they use like a not so powerful model, it might not be as impressive, but yeah.
And the test accuracy, maybe 8%, whatever they used.
Yeah, they used the same thing that was proposed in 1998's paper from Legon and Bengio. That's what they wrote. So they used that and then what Lucas mentioned. That was I mentioned.
But I think in this case, to get an embedding from to recognize the handwritten digits is not that difficult. You can have like a very simple CNN network to finish it very decently. So I don't think that's a crucial differentiator here. Like a very powerful CNN architecture and a very simple one in this case won't change much because the handwritten digit task is not that difficult. My personal.
No, also they don't go into the embeddings and all. It's just what they do is they have this notion of like image X and then it just gives them some value between 0 and 1. So like 0.8 would be 80% probability that the image is that particular digit. And after that, it's all about using that ground data. So it doesn't go into any detail about it. And I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yes, I had a question regarding complexity and also their results. So to me, like one of the big red flags was that, yeah, as you pointed out too, which is like all the tasks are very toy tasks. And so like despite this amazing performance, most of them like they sort of like put it under the rug, like on the actual tasks or like the actual, the algorithm being general enough to handle more realistic tasks. I guess in terms of complexity or in terms of other things, in your opinion, what is the bottleneck?
Well, the bottleneck is clearly this clauses generated by the templates because it blows up really quick and there's multiple drivers to that. They did this in a very limited case. I will say after reading the paper a couple times, I don't think they were trying to hide anything because they were pretty upfront about being a memory hog and having, big time complexity as a result of that as well. And they even have a section in the appendix where they said, why not a smaller model? And they talk about some of their empirical experiences that led them down the path they did. I personally, I view this as, a really foundational thing and just being able to show that it can be done. I don't think that clause generation by templates is probably going to be something that is used in the long term, but I think it was a nice way to, see research in this problem. Yeah.
So I saw that in the exam, in the problems, and the examples they gave, they were saying that okay, let's say pred1 is an input like intention predicate, and then it's learning where to put pred1 or what to put the weights and stuff like that. And then in some problems they were giving pred1 and pred2, and it's quite obvious that which problems would need pred1 or which problems would need pred2, like two predicates. But that's obvious to ask, like why, like to me, like without doing any experiments, it feels like if you can give multiple predicates to learn to a problem which needs only one, then there's a chance that it might mess up, or there's a chance that it could learn the same thing. But giving the specific exactly the number of predicates seems like kind of giving some kind of an idea of exactly what it is to learn. I
think that's a fair criticism because the template is presuming some structure. And it's kind of this funny argument that you say that, well, we need to, whether it's like learning a structure of a neural net or learning a logic program, they're both structural. Then when you do that, you find in a lot of the work, there's still some assumptions made about what kind of structure are you gonna learn. And, you know, I would tend to agree that, you know, these are, you know, somewhat strong assumptions about the structure. And I think that's a fair criticism.
And the other thing is, that is like that noise in handling noise. So I think that in general the experiments are fine, but regarding the way they did it, so they mentioned that they sample a proportion of from a positive set and from a negative set, and then they flip it basically. They take the negative example and put it in the positive sample, and then the other way around. And like they show that once it goes above 0.5, the error increases significantly, but the entropy of the system reduces. And that makes sense because now my question is, initial part I understand completely because like increasing the noise, but eventually if you keep on taking the same number, same proportion and flip it, essentially aren't you asking the system to learn the other route, the opposite of what you want to learn? But most of the time noises won't come like that. Noise will be like, like there will be like in the input, the false positives and the false negatives, they would not be proportional. And in this case, they keep increasing. Eventually, we're learning the opposite.
I mean, I think that on the surface of it, that seems fair. I think the analysis of that would be dependent on the balance of the positive and negative samples on how true that is, because it wouldn't necessarily be the case that it's imbalanced, especially in excretion. I think if you do consider everything you say and they are balanced, I think in many ways that is a good argument for why those particular group of results are strong, because it degrades very gracefully up until 50%. And then by what you say, you would expect that after 50%, it's like all bets are off because it's essentially flipped. But I mean, so I'd have to look at some details to like say all that for sure. I'll probably cut this question out of YouTube. Yeah.
I got lost in the middle. Like, can you give an example of where you said that pick J from the number 1 and K from the like JK pairs?
In the So J is an index over all clauses for template 1. K is an index over all clauses for template 2. And so for a given clause, this F function takes that input A vector and gives you a new vector that has non-zero values in anything that was in the head of the rule. And then does the same thing for the second. So this is for one pair, picking one from one from the other template. And then later on, you see they're summing over all pairs, but assigning a probability to it using the weights. Get a follow?
So F is like a mapping function.
F is essentially like, it's like from LTN. It's like you have the, you could imagine neurons associated with stuff in A, and then going to a new neuron for what's in the head of the rule. And the activation function is the product T norm, and there's no parameters. Anything else? Yeah.
I got a question
on the math test, on the result test. It's not in this picture. When doing the add, even on, can you show that slide?
So did I have a slide for that, or is it in the paper?
No, it's in the slide. Yeah, it's,
So this one?
yeah.
Yes.
How come is it so like performing so well compared to the other methods? I mean,
These are all differentiable ILP. This is just difference in the T norm. The column that says differentiable ILP is product T norm. This is differentiable ILP with Boodle, with Chevlets, and using max.
so
What is this the max of those three? So, and yeah, the main reason why this is better is, they say that the gradients are distributed more evenly. And that kind of makes sense because this product is the partial derivative, one of the factors goes away. And the other thing that makes sense is this is essentially the same result that LTNs found, even though it's not an induction problem. They also found that the product T norm gave them better performance.
I'm curious about first, can you remind me about like what is the limit of how many applications of the fixed point operator they have? Like in other words, like how many times do they basically make derivations?
I think in this paper, I think it was 3.
Right. And I'm kind of curious, like, so if they do things that are like some of these tasks, right, are supposed to be recursive, and I'm curious how that relates to like, for instance, a graph calling task. In principle, you think you would need a lot more than 3 like applications. And I guess they also make this comparison to like differential programming. And so I'm curious like how like that limitation, I guess, compares to basically being able to do like Turing complete problems like graph coloring. In other words, it seems like they basically like you'd have to increase that significantly to actually be able to do some of these problems.
So effectively, it prevents you from doing those harder problems. So that's clear. That said, of these small problems is they've engineered it where I think that it doesn't need the extra inference depth. The other thing to consider is one thing about this approach that I didn't like is in general what they're doing is they're essentially using the forward pass to compute their error in these tasks. And they said, hey, and then when you actually need to see the rules, just grab all the rules where the associated probability is like 10% or something, right? And because of that step where they're doing this kind of expected value over all pairs of rules, this is where it departs from actual logic. And this is why you can't just take that logic program and apply it and get the same results as the forward pass. It's because of this. Because you still technically need all the rules to get the same thing. It's the same. With a small probability, I'm going to apply this obscure template.
It's kind of running like multiple rules in parallel, just with the weighting.
Well, all the rules are still there. Remember when I said at the beginning, once you generate the rules from a clause and you tack on those Boolean variables, all those things are in the logic program. In the classical case, the ones that have a contradiction in the body of the rules, they just go away. In this case, everything's still there. They haven't gone anywhere. You just have some guys with a really small probability. And so they're actually still there in a very subtle way. But you also have to think, okay, well, maybe those probabilities are small, so they don't matter. But we also have a combinatorial number of things. So maybe they add up, I don't know. My point is if you didn't have that, and you could just take the rules directly out of that, then I would say, hey, even if you limited the number of inference steps in training, it might still work on problems that require multiple inference steps. And the reason I say that is, if your training data if everything in your training data has that limited number of inference steps, it's going to learn what was best based on the training data, and maybe it'll still generalize to something that's required from it. We still got time if there's more questions. Questions from online?
Nope, nothing here.
All right, well, thank you very much. And, like I said, if you want another IPR, please sign up. Yeah.